right people come together at the right moment, when they care almost as much about winning as they do about each other, they can become the best of the best.
Welcome to the best soccer show, the best soccer show in the whole world.
Here we go. It's the best soccer show. Jason Davis, once again, by myself on the best soccer show. Who knows who could drop by this evening? But for the moment, it is just me welcoming in everybody who might be watching live. Anybody listening on the podcast later, which I still think is...
people come together at the
I got
right
it on loop.
moment,
My apologies.
Almost as much
This is what happens when I'm by myself. Music plays twice, and I feel like an idiot for that. It's been a day, guys. It's been a bit of a day for your friend Jason. So, as I was saying, who knows who could pop by for the live viewers. I'm here by myself. If you're listening via podcast, which I still think is the majority of our audience here on the Best Soccer Show, today is a momentous show in the history of the Best Soccer Show because it's happening again. Okay, that sounded very dark. I can't bury the lead here, I guess. And if you are a bestie and you were in the Slack today, you might know what I'm about to say. So I'll just say it. As of this show, and you've probably caught on the last couple of weeks, that Jay Rodius, Jared Dubois, has not been available to do the show.
Jay Rodius.
Jared has decided to step back from the Best Soccer Show. He's got a lot going on. This is his story to tell, and you know, he's going to eventually, I think, deliver some information as to why this went down, perhaps to the besties over on the bonus feed. So if you are a bestie, you might hear it straight from the man himself. I don't want to speak for him. I just want to pass this along. And I hate that it's me here doing it by myself, telling you that Jared has had to step away from the show. But that's where we are in February of 2026. We are now here in a moment. And by the way, no hard feelings, no anger, no upset, no resentment at all towards the Rodius for the choice that he has made. I completely get it, right? Even if it was for silly reasons, he always has the right to say, I can't do this right now, and to step away from the show. I mean, this has been for the last, how long have we been sort of back? 2.0 era. 6 years? Like, it's been a while, right? If you've been around the Best Soccer Show, if you've been a listener for a long time, you'll know that we had the 1.0 era, the initial run of the Best Soccer Show, which was from 2011 to 2015-ish, 2016-ish. I think that's probably right. And then a couple years went by. Jared was raising his family. I was meeting my wife, who I'm married to now. There was lots of things going on. And I convinced the man to come back. I had missed the Best Soccer Show. I had missed talking to my friend Jared. I had missed talking to you guys about American soccer. And I convinced him to come back and do the show with me. And it's been a good run. Like, it hasn't been the same. Like, it hasn't been the same as the original run. We were young and looked different. I see pictures of myself back then. I just like, wow. Did I share an image of me doing the first ever Best Soccer Show last week? I think I did, right? In 2011. So, you know, things have changed. Life has moved on. And I've enjoyed doing it the last couple of years or whatever it's been with Jared. But, you know, things do change and life does go on. And there's reasons why this is happening. Of course, I am a soccer media professional. So for me, this is my job. Like, talking into a microphone and into a camera about soccer is what I do for a living, in addition to some other things around the edges. Go read my newsletter, Jason Davis Soccer Eagle. So I don't have the same sort of, I got to pull myself away from this thing as Jared. Jared's got another job. That's his main income source. I mean, this is barely an income source. And, you know, we haven't been trying to force that along. We haven't been looking to grow this into anything more than just a couple of friends hanging out, talking about soccer, and hopefully making something fun and interesting and informed and all of those things. So for him, it's a different test of whether or not it's good to continue doing the show. So he's moved on. But guys, this is my life, right? This is what I do. And I said this to the besties today in the Slack. Patreon.com/the best soccer show. Should be this be the moment that you decide to become a bestie. I don't think it'll be like, just because Jared's no longer on the show doesn't mean Jared won't be around. If you know what I'm saying, in the Slack and in other places, he'll be part of the community. So you won't completely miss out on the Rodius. Obviously, the show will change, but let's get to that. So I said this in the Slack today, that this is rough for a couple reasons. One, gonna miss my buddy on the show, and two, it's a World Cup year. Like, this is the year this is the year I want to be talking to the besties and building up towards the World Cup. If anything, this show is a U.S. men's national team focused show. Now, it's at times in the past been much more MLS focused, or, other stories, things in American soccer, and it has changed a bit over the years. But this is, if you're a U.S. men's national team show, how could we not be here for the World Cup? Or how could the best soccer show not be here for the World Cup? So this is me laying it bare, right? Okay, this is me putting all my cards on the table when it comes to the future of the best soccer show, right? Because I don't want to stop doing it. Like, I don't want to stop jumping on here once a week, doing it live, also putting out that podcast, engaged with the community, talking about dumb stuff in addition to our passion for soccer. And, like I said, this is my job. So yeah, I got the radio gig where I spend 3 hours a day talking to Eric Winalda about stuff. Like today, for example, was mostly Champions League, as you can imagine. There was a sprinkling of American soccer, but not much. I have Morning Kick Around, which is a very fun show. If you haven't checked out Morning Kick Around, please do. I put that specifically in the morning because I had time in the morning and because I wanted to cover American soccer stories. And that show has kind of evolved into talking a lot about USL, their big plans, promotion, relegation, new clubs popping up everywhere rather. If you are paying attention at all to Morning Kick Around, you know that today we did a 3-hour marathon episode of Morning Kick Around as a fundraiser, as a launching pad, as a awareness mechanism, and that kind of stuff. And we announced that we're going to be doing a live show in Pawtucket, Rhode Island on May 9th, around the Rhode Island FC versus Tampa Bay Rowdies match. We're getting brought up there by the tourism board of Blackstone Valley to kind of highlight the area, highlight the soccer history. It's very cool. I'm very excited about it, but it's different, right? It's not this. It's not the OG Jason Davis soccer show / podcast. I mean, this is not actually the OG, but this is the one that, became a thing that allowed me to even have a career in the business that I'm in, right? That's the thing that I will always say about Jared Dubois and the Best Soccer Show. If not for the Best Soccer Show, I don't have the job I have. I don't get to be talking about soccer as my living every single day or every weekday, right? Those things don't happen. Those are the dominoes that fell, started with the Best Soccer Show and the rapport that Jared and I had on this show. And even though it's sad that he's stepping away, like, even though it's sad that he's not going to be here doing the show with me on Wednesdays or Thursdays, or it used to be Sundays. Did we used to do the show on Sundays? Man, some of you guys might remember that. As sad as that's going to be, I think there is an opportunity here, right? I'm choosing to see this as in And so I'm putting this to you again. It's bare. I'm laying the cards on the table. I'm asking the bestie. We did used to do 2 shows a week. Wow. Thank you, Clayton. That's a good shout. You know what? I'm just going to put the comments on the screen for anybody who's here watching and who might watch it back on YouTube or Spotify or whatever. Your comments will be on the screen so I can read them a little bit easier. Who's going to bring the inappropriate now? Ooh, that's a good question. That's a good question. So this is what I'm saying, guys, right? It's a little sad. It's a little not great that Jared has had to step back.
Damn, dog, that's inappropriate.
It is not ideal in a World Cup year. Again, no resentment, no anger towards the Rodius. So if we want the show to continue, then we need to figure this out. And let's figure this out together. Right? In the Slack, in the Bestie Slack, in the community, somebody said, you should have like a rotating cast of guest hosts. Like, not just one person kind of steps in and becomes the new Rodius, but maybe go through a round robin special guest host leading up to the World Cup. I think it was Dustin who said that in the chat, or in the Slack rather. And I'd love to do that. Right now, I need to figure out who those people might be. And they're going to have to want to spend an hour of their evening on some night during the week talking about American soccer with me. Right. And let's be honest, I'm kind of spoiled. I had the best partner in the game. Like I had Jay Rodius, Jared Dubois. I would like to try. Of course, I would like to try. It'll be painful, right, to go through that process, to lose Jared. But maybe there's somebody out there who can fill the void. They can become the new Jared Dubois, the new Jay Rodius. I'm open to suggestions, right? Now, it'll be strange, sort of doing like a blind date sort of matchmaker situation if I don't know said person. But I am interested. And like this is also like kind of a casting call. Like why not? Why not treat this as a casting call and say, if you are interested, if you know that you might be good at this, I'm not saying you have to be Jared Dubois, because those are some big shoes to fill. Can't say underwear because he doesn't wear it. Those are some big shoes to fill. Don't have to be Jared Dubois, but you can be your own person. And if you have that energy, let me look at the chat, see what's going on here. I see Trooper Barry. I hear Matt Doyle has time on his hands these days. Matt Doyle's got other obligations. He's part of the kickback crew now. So he's going to be doing soccer-wise stuff and all that in terms of broadcasting and podcasts and those kind of things. He's obviously dropping like massive pieces on his now independent newsletter. So I guess go support Matt there. Had Matt on the morning kick around marathon show today, actually. So shout out to Matt for doing that. JTT will come up. Of course, JTT is going to come up. And JTT is maybe our oldest friend.
Where's that guy?
Is that JTT?
OMFPG-13, it's JTT!
Who? I think he'll probably show up on a regular basis. Like, so there's an option, perhaps. Pablo. Pablo hasn't, just realized my camera went fuzzy. Pablo probably hasn't done podcasting since what? The days of Open Wide for some soccer? Is that probably right? Pablo's writing for The Guardian now. That's great. That's good to see. Still dropping bombs over there on American soccer topics, whether they're reported, like the Ernst Tanner situation in Philadelphia, or, the esoteric stuff. I imagine that will come back at some point. It's a World Cup year, though. I guess I could ask Pablo. That could be a possibility. He's not a bad suggestion. This is, again, I don't even know that this needs to be somebody that's sort of already known in American soccer. I mean, just obviously last week, in light of the Matt Doyle news that he was leaving MLSsoccer.com, or that they were eliminating his position, I wrote the soccer media thing I did at the newsletter, right? The kind of overview of where we are in American soccer media, where we thought we would be when I started doing this 15, 18 years ago, and where we are right now. And, look, it's a lot of kind of navel-gazy, woe is us. Look, it's so sad that our business isn't doing better kind of stuff. Even as I'm sitting here again, making a reasonable living from talking about soccer on the radio, right? But the writing jobs are few and far between, and they're difficult. And all of these newsrooms are contracting. In fact, I don't know that he's done any public announcing of this, but he is open to work on his LinkedIn, so I should mention this. A guy I've known for a while, a guy who's done a good job covering Atlanta United, Doug Robertson, has apparently been let go by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, so that's where we are in soccer media. I know there's a lot of people making their own stuff out there. I mean, you guys don't need me to tell you that there's, YouTubers. I don't want to become okay. And this is not meant as a criticism a criticism of anybody. Like, I'm not throwing bombs or shots here, but I don't want to be one of those solo YouTubers who sort of breaks down the national team picture all the time. Like, I don't think that's me to begin with. And even if I wanted to make a run at that, I don't think I would enjoy it. I don't think I would like to, because while I understand the national team sells, and we do talk a lot of national team here, and we seem to be focused on that, I think that we should be looking at a bigger picture of American soccer and trying to tie all these threads together. It seems to me that there's an adversarial relationship quite often between the people who really want the U.S. men's national team to thrive and those people who also think American soccer played at the club level or some other versions of the game are worthwhile. Right? That seems to me like I don't want that energy. I don't want to be sitting here wondering if it's a bad thing if a player decides he's going to sign an MLS contract because it might hurt his national team prospects. Like that, it's something to talk about, but like just kind of get wrapped up in all that all the time. And again, I know it's a World Cup year, right? It kind of comes with the territory. So, I'm seeing from Trooper Barry the update on the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, fully digital. They dropped a bunch of people because they're not printing actual papers anymore. Major U.S. cities like Atlanta, New Orleans, Portland are without daily newspapers now. That stinks, man. And like I said, like I wrote about this last week, I'm not under any illusion as to why that's happening. The world has changed to a place. The way the money is coming into media isn't through magazine or newspaper subscriptions, rather. All right. Let's see. Danny T Radio. Dude did MLS videos on YouTube for years and literally posted yesterday. He's probably done with editing those YouTube videos. He was a solo YouTuber focused on MLS content. Yeah, that's a grind too. That's a grind that those guys who are out there making stuff specifically on Major League Soccer. I appreciate that effort. Man, video editing is that's a time suck. I do a little bit of that these days. And it is definitely a thing that is hard to work into your daily life if you have any other obligations whatsoever. Like if you have to do anything except edit video, record video and edit video, it's really hard to find the time to make it work on a quick schedule. All right. So, look, I don't want to belabor this. I don't want to make this the whole point of the show. This is not a, some like, oh, it's so sad. It's life. This is what happens. Again, I'm blessed that I get to do this and talk to you guys in all these other different formats. And again, rather than sort of shut down shop and let the best soccer show die because we lost a major part of it, even though it will feel weird, I'm working on trying to figure out a solution. If you have thoughts, you can always put them on the comments on the YouTube video or drop them on Spotify or anywhere for that matter. Maybe leave them in the Apple podcast review. I don't care. All right. Let me see what's in the chat. Cody says Taylor Rockwell occasionally. Man, I don't know. Taylor's recording schedule seems kind of nuts. Like, and Taylor and I have this relationship where we don't talk about soccer much when Taylor and I hang out or we interact. Like, we know each other through soccer. We definitely have talked about soccer. But nowadays, it seems weird to talk about soccer. I think it's because, we both have young kids. We're both trying to just, have normal lives while also making this particular business work for us. But yeah, Taylor's a good shout. Obviously love talking to Taylor. Would happily bring him on the show. What's Ivis up to nowadays? Ivis, I believe, still works behind the scenes at CBS, Paramount, Galazzo, that outlet. So he's been doing some stuff for a while there. Obviously, Soccer by Ivis still exists, so SBI Soccer is still a thing. Let's see. Trooper Barry says, It's worth touching on and celebrating what TBSSS. That's a tough one to say out loud. I never really say it. TBSS has had, will always have Matador. Man. And that's actually a thing about this. Again, this is by no means a postmortem. Like, we're not eulogizing the best soccer show. But I do wish I had a little bit better grasp on some of the history of this show, because I think the lore of this show runs really deep. And it stinks that I don't quite have a handle on all of it. Like, for example, the Matador period, which have I ever mentioned that's when your friend Jason was going through his divorce? Have we talked about that? Is that too much on the couch kind of stuff? Yeah, at that point, I was between things, I guess you could say. So that was a very interesting period. But we had Matador. I think I just played the video of Jared and I making our appearance on Matador. Like, however you want to say we appearance be in terms of our vocal talents, not by appearing actual people on the show. Just our voices coming out of a radio when we were the sports talk radio hosts on Matador. That's pretty cool. That'll always be a special thing. Couldn't you have a rotating cast of guest hosts, famous ones and people who aren't famous? I bet eventually you will click with someone. Yeah, that's the idea. But again, think about the position I'm in. Like, I got some friends in soccer, but they all have jobs or families, or, it's kind of an awkward thing to think, hey, can you maybe like sort of audition to be on the best soccer show with me? Like, maybe we make it a regular thing, Wednesday nights, Thursday nights, just for an hour or whatever, bro. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. That I could try that. Maybe I'll put something up on LinkedIn. Do you guys think I could find a new co-host for the best soccer show if I put up a posting on LinkedIn? What would my LinkedIn job listing need to look like for the best soccer show? All right. Before this gets too weird, let's talk about the U.S. men's national team striker situation. Thinking a lot about this today. Obviously, it is on everybody's mind because we are getting close enough to the World Cup that it seems to matter what form guys are in. And Valerian Balogun just scored twice in the Champions League against PSG. Both of them good goals. I think that obviously reinforces his status as the top choice for the U.S. men's national team. And I think that would be true regardless of where Ricardo Pepi was in terms of fitness. And right now, Ricardo Pepi is not fit. This is where it gets a little dicey for me. Now, Pepi's supposed to come back next month at some point in March, but maybe not in time for the friendlies that the United States will have at the end of the month. So how do you rate Ricardo Pepi as a candidate for the U.S. men's national team right now for the World Cup this summer? I would love to know how many people still think Pepi has to be on the team, right? How many people are like, oh, it doesn't matter. He got hurt. He was the starter at PSV Eindhoven, that he was a guy that, was getting goals, whatever you want to say about the level, et cetera, he's still got to be on the team, right? Because at one point we were debating whether it was going to be Balogun or Pepi starting for the United States men's national team. And even if Balogun has now passed Pepi by, all things being considered, it doesn't mean Pepi is being pushed out of the team. But I don't know how you ignore what Haji Wright and Patrick Agyemang are doing right now in the English Championship. And say what you want about the championship, I think it compares very favorably, at least in terms of how the defending is, to the Eredivisie. In fact, the championship is probably a better defensive league than the Eredivisie. So if you're scoring goals in the English Championship, now it's physical. It's not always the prettiest soccer. Sometimes it's just physicality that gets you the goals that you score. If you're scoring there, are we sure? Do we feel good about it translating over to international play, and particularly the World Cup? Because it doesn't matter if Haji Wright could score in CONCACAF or Patrick Agyemang could score in CONCACAF. What matters is that they could score in the World Cup. What matters is that when we get to June and we're looking at what the United States men's national team needs to do to get out of the group on home soil and have the kind of World Cup that we all desperately want them to have, right? The kind of World Cup that will not only allow us as fans to feel good about whatever we did in the tournament, but also potentially lift the sport, because that's always the way of things. We want players who can help the United States do that, right? We want players who in 30 years will be doing reunions about that incredible World Cup they had back in 2026, because it was such a seminal moment for American soccer. Very much like 94, but hey, probably even a level beyond that because of the visibility of the sport at that point in time. Right? And if you're going to be very specific about this, you want players who can play well and be effective against Paraguay, Australia, and then obviously we have a UEFA team that's not yet determined, with those matches coming up in March to determine who will be in that U.S. group. Slovakia, Kosovo, Turkey, and Romania. And I guess, when we go back to the draw, lots of us looked at that grid. Okay, it's going to be Turkey. You're going to play mostly against a low block, and the United States obviously beat Australia in 2025. Paraguay is not going to come after you too much. So that's a team you beat in 2025, right? Turkey is a team that beat you. They're much more technical, much more adept team in terms of how they use the ball. How does any of that impact who you choose for the World Cup? So Balogun's a lock. No one is saying anything controversial if they say that. Pepe is a question. Haji Wright, who also has some versatility, which is always a nice thing to have at a World Cup, is also in the picture. Patrick Agyemang, and how many times have I said it on this show, and probably in other places, because I say things in a lot of places, Patrick Agyemang is an X factor. Like, he is an unpredictable player when we talk about what he brings to the table. Obviously, he's a very physical player. He's a handful. So I think that I like that idea. Now, I'm probably talking myself into it. Like, I'm imagining Patrick Agyemang being much more useful off the bench late in games than he might end up being. Because, well, hopefully you don't need him. Right? Hopefully you figured out how to win the games you need to win in Group D so that you don't have to use him late in matches. Like, you start off with Paraguay. And if we're chasing the game against Paraguay on June 12th at SoFi Stadium, then that bodes poorly for the entire World Cup. You play Australia in the second game at Lumen Field in Seattle 7 days later. Like, I hope we don't need an X factor off the bench. I mean, you obviously want a goal scorer off the bench, but Agyemang in particular, and his physicality, is that's what you need. Again, I'd also like the diversity of options. And I wonder if that's something that Pochettino is going to be thinking about. Like, okay, I've got a Balogun who plays this way. I've got a Pepe who plays this way. They're not all that dissimilar, right? I got a Haji Wright that can do a bunch of things, can play wide. Obviously is a good nose for a goal. Has been at a World Cup. Also worth considering, I suppose. Then you have a player like Patrick Agyemang, has, so raw, but that is also a thing that I think can work to his advantage. Seeing that, a couple comments about Pepe being a good goal scorer off the bench. Yeah, I mean, look, that is the argument for bringing Pepe, is that he could end up in a role that he knows very well. But guys, I don't think it's impossible to imagine that unless he gets back on the field for PSV Eindhoven and starts banging in goals almost right away, that Ricardo Pepi is behind right now 3 other players at that position. And by the way, the names I'm not mentioning here that some people will bring up, Josh Sargent, obviously in friggin' Siberia at Norwich right now, in the doghouse, not getting playing time because of the whole transfer saga and his desire to leave for Toronto, and the club not letting him go. And where are we with that? Is Josh Sargent just not a soccer player anymore? Like, is he just kind of just wasting away? What is there to do in Norwich if you're not playing soccer? Does that mean to Norwich? I actually don't know. I don't know anything about that. So, but Josh Sargent probably wasn't the guy anyway. He doesn't seem to score for the U.S. men's national team when he gets his chances, and that kind of means that despite the fact that he might actually be an informed player when we get there, if he's playing, right? This is all right now speculation because of his situation at Norwich. You kind of toss that out because he's Josh Sargent and because he hasn't done it when he's gotten his shot. So, there are writers who have tackled this question. The players that went to the World Cup in 2022, Sargent, Wright, Jesus Ferreira, we know that none of them were overly effective. They all got their shot. It was only Wright who scored. So if we're talking about who you take to this, Balogun's already better than any other option, any of those options you had at the World Cup in 2022, which is nice. Pepe should be at a higher level. I think Haji Wright's a better player than he was in 2022, which makes a case for him. I have not brought up Brian White, who I like as a player, but probably isn't at this level. I'm seeing some of these comments about Patrick Agyemang and Haji Wright. I just watched Coventry versus Middlesbrough today. Haji Wright was very impressive. Spiders Latan. Pat hasn't really scored against anyone above mid-level championship teams, taking him as a bigger risk than Pepe, I would say. But again, it's role specific, right? It's if you're saying, who am I starting in a World Cup? You're probably not taking Patrick Agyemang. Like if your only concern is I might need this guy to start in a World Cup match. And again, what did Berhalter do? He used everybody in a bid to find something that worked and got it wrong. Got it wrong, absolutely. But if we're just talking about, okay, I got a guy to start, maybe I have a guy to spell him who also I could trust to start, and I need another guy. I need again an X factor. I need somebody who can do a different job. Again, Pepe is an adept off the bench goal scorer, but I also think that he's at a level, if he's healthy, that you can imagine him starting for the U.S. men's national team. And so Agyemang, who's 6'4" and is just such a different physical player, such a different profile in terms of that physicality. I guess that's why I keep trying to talk myself into Patrick Agyemang. And I also think that the energy he brings, his attitude, could be a factor. It could be an element that Pochettino considers for this team. And that's not to say there's anything wrong with Haji Wright or Balogun, who, doesn't seem like a bad dude. Not at all. But Patrick Agyemang is a joyful guy. And I wonder about how much that might be a factor here when it comes to what Pochettino decides to do. There are obviously other positions that we're all watching. I mean, a lot of talk about Weston McKennie. Set up a goal in that very wild loss Juve had to Galatasaray in the Champions League this week. Not his fault. Started as a number 9, by the way. Right? Weston McKennie's not going to play center forward for the U.S. men's national team, we don't think. But it was interesting to see Spalletti deploy him that way. Now, that had a lot to do with the fact that neither David nor Vlahovic were available. So it was an issue of manpower and availability for Spalletti. And I don't think you can lay any of the blame for what happened to Juve at the feet of Weston McKennie. So, he's fine. He's doing very well at Juve, except for maybe this match. Again, had an assist. It was a very nice pass to Coop Miners for, I think, the second one he scored in the 32nd minute. But defensively, Juve was a disaster. That's going to fall back on Spalletti. And now they'll have the second leg to try to turn over a 3-goal deficit. Also, Weston McKennie's contract is still not sorted. He's still without a deal. The last reports I read suggest that McKennie's people are asking for double his salary, that they wanted 100% raise for Weston. And guys, he probably deserves it, right? Just in terms of his performance, Weston McKennie probably deserves to get paid double what he's making at Juve right now, which is something in the neighborhood of three something million euros. Out of everybody in that team, and there's a couple of, obviously, some very talented players in that group, who's been more consistent than McKennie? Right? Who has been a player that that Spalletti can rely, and Spalletti deserves a lot of credit, right, for unleashing McKennie, who had shown signs of that under various managers at Juve, but now is doing it again for Spalletti, who has talked him up. Who knows if Juve comes back with an offer anywhere close to what McKennie wants. Obviously, there's a question of whether or not McKennie will kind of bet on himself, believe that he's going to have one of those World Cups that just makes him into a potential big summer signing for somebody else, leverage it that way, right? He's doing CNN hits now, I see, which I haven't had a chance to watch. Lots of stuff going on, but he's out there, right, ahead of the World Cup, being a presence for the U.S. men's national team. And this is interesting because, again, at a time when we are not 100% sure of what Pochettino thinks of McKennie, or there have been signs that perhaps it hasn't always been to Pochettino's liking what McKennie has done. We have, famously leaving him out of a couple of teams last year, a couple of camps, and talk, well, we know what Weston can do, right? I don't know. So again, the report here on Juve and Weston, Juve has confirmed its interest in renewing his contract. McKennie proven himself to be a key player, capable of playing in multiple positions. I mean, now that he's played center forward in a Champions League fixture, I mean, think about the number of spots: midfield, wing back, right back. I don't think he's played center back, but he's played pretty much everywhere else except goalkeeper. McKennie stated he wants to stay at Juve, but clarified that the current contract is under discussion. And again, the reports are salary doubled. I mean, some of this you can't really be sure of, because that's how the media works. That's how these stories work, whether it's transfers or contracts or those kind of things. And again, Gazzetta dello Sport in Italy is one of the sources for this. They're the ones saying that he wants to double that 2.5 to 3 million euro salary. Juve are ready to offer a pay raise to reward him, but they've balked at the idea of doubling his contract. Now, like we all know, if you've ever negotiated a contract or even are aware of how negotiations work, somebody says, I want this, and the other side says, no chance you're getting that. And the other side goes, well, okay, well, how about this? And they go, well, maybe, but I still don't like that number. And they go, well, what about the side, other side says, well, what about this number? That's a terrible number. I don't like that number. Okay, well, and eventually you meet in the middle. Like, eventually you get to a place so it's like, oh, okay, I'm not completely 100% happy. I wanted more. And you're not completely 100% happy. You wanted to give me less. And yet here we are. All right, I want to hit a couple more comments because you guys are awesome. Let's see. I got Daniel. I think that's Daniel. Just catching up. So sad to hear Jay Rodius is leaving. I started watching soccer in high school in 2010, and you guys have been integral to my soccer schooling. Loyal fan since day one. That is incredible. Thank you very much, man. That is lovely to hear. I'm going to pass that along to the Rodius. You think he'll listen to this? I don't know that he'll listen to this. like listen to Jason by himself. Why would Jay Rodius do that? I'm kidding. I don't know. I actually don't know. All right. Wild Stallion. I don't get Josh Sargent being a quality EFL striker. Seems like a great career, and he flushed it down the toilet due to insane decision making. You're talking about the Toronto thing. All right. Can we unpack that for a second? Can we? Okay, look. Obviously, from a U.S. men's national team focused perspective, if you haven't already given up on Josh Sargent, the idea that Josh Sargent would leave Norwich to go to Toronto seems weird, right? Now, that's if you don't think MLS can compare to the championship. And obviously there's scheduling things and various other factors at play there. I don't think that MLS compares unfavorably to the championship, number one. Number two, this is clearly a guy who's looking at his life in England with a growing family. What did he just have, his third or his fourth? He's got a bunch of kids, right? So he and his wife, which is absolutely their right, have chosen to have a big family. And it seems as though they're at a point where it's like, do we want to raise this big family here in Norwich, in England, on a championships player's salary, which probably isn't nothing? Or do we want to go back to North America, find a place where they are going to make him the centerpiece of their attack, make a good amount of coin, more than he would make it at Norwich, right? More than he would make guaranteed. I mean, we know what the numbers were in terms of the offer. I think it was 18 million or something like that. Josh Sargent would get paid more, just like Michael Bradley did, just like Josie Altidore did, to come, quote unquote, back to MLS. He's never played in it, but it come to MLS and be the guy in Toronto. And if you are Josh Sargent, are you holding on to hope of a national team return based on what you do at Norwich? A Norwich team that's not going up this year, by the way. They're not getting promoted. So you'll be either in the championship again, or you'll be looking for another gig. He did turn down a return to Germany. Didn't want to do that. I think that may have been a lifestyle choice. That may have been a quality of life thing for him and his family. I don't think he loved Germany the first time he was there. So I don't begrudge Josh Sargent the choice that he seems to have made, which is, again, to say, I want to go to Toronto and then engage in the standoff. Now, whether he handled himself properly around that, like, I don't know. That we could argue about that. He probably could have handled it better. Hand in a transfer request, maybe don't beg off of games, and text your manager, maybe have a face-to-face. These things are hard to do sometimes. Hey, I don't really want to be here anymore. But he probably should have done that. So, again, I think Josh Sargent made a choice that has to do with his family and his life. And so far, it's not working out for him in any regard, whether it's playing time or being able to do what he's best at, or even making the move, because that has not been allowed quite yet. Here's a name that we haven't talked about on the show in a while, and I guess I got to bring it up just for a minute. Gio Reyna, guys, is it over? Like, how long? What's the statute of limitations, or whatever you want to say? Like, what's the lifespan here? What's the expiration date on talking about Gio Reyna? Like, is there any real? Is he on Polymarket to make the World Cup team? I mean, maybe he's on regular betting markets. I don't know, but like, Gio Reyna, is that a thing anymore? Like, I want it to be, because there is still this idea of a dream of Gio, right? And sometimes you will see, and I'm not blaming anybody. Like, this is a competitive business. We're all out here trying to make our way in this thing and get attention and get the clicks. Although obviously the dopamine you get from likes and clicks it's not always a good thing for your mental health. But I see these people out there. I see these guys out there. I see the ex-pros, the ex-national teamers, the World Cup veterans who are making their content and bringing up Gio Reyna when he doesn't really deserve to be brought up, when he doesn't seem to be a factor. I know I'm kind of doing it now too, but this is a commentary on that method of generating interest in your content, because you're mentioning Gio Reyna. Gio Reyna is more myth than man at this point. And I'm sad about that. I've always said that the U.S. needs a little of his attitude, but I think it's obviously gone too far. Like, it seems as though Gio's attitude really has completely dragged down his career, rather than being this thing that he can sort of lean into and say, you know what? I'm just that good. I'm going to use this. You're going to see it in me, right? It's, if you are just a cocky asshole, like if you're just a cocky bastard, you have to back it up. Like, you can't be somebody who says, look at me, I'm the best, give me the damn ball every single time you're on the field, and then not back it up. And it feels as though Gio, who's dealing with another injury, right, never backs it up. And this is true. It's cheap heat, backup quarterback syndrome, absolutely. Reyna talk revolves around the player people have built up in their heads, right? I just think it's undeniable he has talent. He's just never applied it in a way that actually matters. So absolutely. Well, I would rather talk about Diego Luna. I would rather talk about Alex Zendejas, who got mentioned earlier by Robert. Like, absolutely, we should talk about those guys instead. Alejandro Zendejas, we're talking about Balogun's form. We're getting goals out of Americans in the championship, right? There's things happening. We'll maybe talk about Christian here in a second. But Alex Zendejas deserves a lot more attention than he's getting. And some of that has to do with where he's playing. And it's not to say Liga MX is a bad league. And obviously he's playing at a massive club It's just that for whatever reason, this is what we do. For whatever, we know the reason. We look across the Atlantic Ocean and we go, oh, if you're there and you're playing well, then we care about you. But if you're actually playing well anywhere else, Major League Soccer, Liga MX, anywhere in the Americas, well, you kind of don't matter as much. Like it's not we're not really as interested in what you're doing, even if it seems to be great, even if you seem to be balling out, and certainly Alexander De Haas is doing that right now. So let's give Alex his due, and I think it's going to be fascinating to see what that roster looks like for next month. And I don't even like we could do the game. We could put together our 26-man rosters. Jared and I did it a couple months back. And we could probably do it now, and it would look very different. Right? We might be talking about a Tanner Tessman. We'd be having to figure out how Tyler Adams features into this again, now that he seems to be coming back from his injury, but that's still, what does that look like? Again, is Ricardo Pepi in your 23 or 28? Or whatever it might be. Like those things are fascinating right now. And Pochettino all over the place, doing all kinds of stuff. Who was it? Do you guys know? I just consume so much dumb information and I see so many things go past me. Maybe it was Pablo. Shout out to Pablo Maurer. I just remembered it was Pablo Maurer who posted on, I don't know if he posted it on X because I'm not on X, but I know he posted it somewhere. Here it is. I do love that Mauricio Pochettino is locked in on keeping his players laser focused on the World Cup, which is what makes it so hilarious that he keeps doing interviews and talking about, Spurs. Little bit of a double standard. A little bit of a thing there for Mauricio Pochettino, to want his team, want his guys to be focused on the World Cup, a la Tim Weah and the comments about the ticket prices and batting those down. And then what is Mauricio Pochettino doing? He's taking tea in London and talking on interviews about Spurs, not the team he manages, not the team he coaches, but about the team he used to coach. I just think that's an interesting thing. All right. Last couple minutes of this show with your friend Jason as we ponder the future of the Best Soccer Show, taking suggestions for people that might jump in here and bring the kind of energy we want. Nobody can be the Rodius, but maybe we can find somebody to step in. Maybe we can do a rotating cast.
Jay Rodius.
Maybe I do produced podcast rather than the live to tape thing, which is what I'm used to. Maybe there's a little bit more of a plan around these things. By the way, shout out to Morgan. Morgan, what is going on? How are you? Morgan's in the chat for anybody who can't see this. Morgan, got to give Morgan some love. Do I have Morgan's drop on the board? I don't know that I do. I can't find it right now. This is what happens when you're by yourself. So I don't have Morgan's drop, but she definitely deserves some love. Thank you, Morgan, for being here. Miss you too. Okay. Major League Soccer starts on Saturday. First of all, who knew that Major League Soccer started on Saturday? Raise your hand or give me some emoji or something, because I'm seeing this, right? And now I'm living this soccer media thing. So Major League Soccer coming up this weekend has kind of always, the last couple weeks, been in my purview, right? I'm not covering MLS like I used to. I'm not writing about it like I used to when it was one of my jobs. But on the radio, we do some MLS preview stuff. Winalda and I talk about MLS teams. And so I get to say every so often to remind myself, MLS starts on Saturday. The 2026 MLS season starts on Saturday. And I'm also very fascinated by this thing where this is the last full season that will start at this time of year. Next year, we'll be launching into the mini season ahead of the summer. We'll take the summer off, and then we'll have that 2027, 2028 MLS season, the first ever season on the quote unquote European calendar. So I know there are stories out there, and I got to read them. Like I got to eat up this content that is being done by people like, I think Jeff Reuter did this at The Guardian, the stories about how teams are preparing for the calendar switch. But this is a big season. You would expect MLS to be making a big deal out of it. And what I'm reading and what I'm seeing is people saying, wait a second, is the league even promoting their own product? Like, are we even seeing Major League Soccer, the corporate headquarters, the league offices do enough to tell people that their league is coming back? They may be focused more on what Leagues Cup and those kind of things, the World Cup, all this stuff. And yet here we are just a couple days away from the MLS season getting underway. And maybe it's under the radar somehow. And I got to get a better grasp of this, right? Like, I'm not going to be one of those people who tells you, like, I completely understand why this is happening. I'm not sure I do. I wrote about and talked about media last week. John Tannenwald and I went through the whole media landscape of American soccer, not just MLS, but American soccer last week. That was cathartic in some way, right? So the media is part of this. We have the Apple TV deal. MLS is now no longer on its own part of Apple TV. It's just part of Apple TV, right? Which I'm excited to have back on my box because I didn't have it. I just had MLS, and now here we are, and I got to have Apple, and I'm going to get MLS, and I'm getting F1 apparently. Got to make some time for F1, I guess. So anyway, MLS is out from. It's not a double paywall, but they're kind of out behind they're behind their own paywall, which you would expect would mean a big push and more interest. And if you've got Apple, you can then get MLS. You don't have to be an MLS fan to like fall into MLS or maybe be delivered to MLS if they can convince you to click on your Apple TV platform on MLS. And yet, man, it does feel like some regression is happening, right? And this is odd because it's happening in conjunction with Major League Soccer franchise values going up, right? We just saw Sporting Kansas City get sold. The majority share of Sporting Kansas City got sold at above the club's valuation. Now, and this came up today when I had Matt Doyle on Morning Kick Around on our Kickathon Marathon show, right? There is absolutely room and reason to question those numbers and question some of the valuations and laughing at what Sportico and Forbes say MLS teams are worth. What do you mean they're worth $1 billion? What a 1.5 for Inter Miami? What are you talking about? No one's going to pay that, except people are, right? Except people are kind of doing those things to back up those numbers. And you can say things like, oh, it's a bubble, or it's a pyramid scheme, or it's not real. But if we're talking about sort of the real life element of how these teams, clubs, franchise rights, operator rights, whatever you want to call them, are being sold, bought and sold, they are real, right? There is something there. Like, for all intents and purposes, MLS is growing in that regard. It doesn't matter if you call it an artificial market if it doesn't blow up. And so far, it hasn't blown up. And I don't think we have any real sense that MLS values are going to crash, or that clubs are going to fold, or the league is going to have some massive reduction in the investment that is there. I think what we're seeing, and this is again a guess because I'm still looking at this and still trying to understand it, but it seems to me like what MLS has fallen into, or maybe maneuvered themselves into by accident or through no effort, or maybe you could argue, again, if this is a negative, if we're casting this in a negative light, Major League Soccer has sort of fumbled their way into being a niche product that is nevertheless very valuable to certain people that might be interested in it. And I mostly mean ownership, and the people are putting money into clubs. But I guess, again, how do we measure the success of a sports product in 2026? Because we don't have metrics for that really work anymore. You certainly cannot compare MLS to the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA. Maybe you can the NHL a little bit, but I don't know. You can't really compare those. And I don't mean that as like, oh, MLS really screwed up. They don't matter as much as those leagues, and they could have. I don't know that they ever could have, at least in this country, right? And we go back to the Apple TV play in the beginning and how that was an international play. Instead of parceling out their rights across the globe for small amounts of money to various countries, you can show MLS and here, give us a little bit of coin for that. And here, we'll sell your. They're like, no, everybody gets Apple. That's how you get the league. Let's see if we can go international with this thing, especially with Messi's arrival. Because what's happening, what's going on in the United States seems to be that MLS has very clearly run into the brick wall that is, you can't have a new sports product enter the zeitgeist, enter the general culture of America. Right? There is a soccer culture and we should celebrate it. There is a soccer history and we should celebrate it. There are lots of soccer fans, but they're not all MLS fans. A percentage and a minority percentage of American soccer fans are MLS fans. And MLS, by virtue of that, to PSU, to DCU's point, is a local product, right? A local product. And I think what is hard is to determine whether you think that's a bad thing, whether that is a black mark on MLS. Because MLS did kind of take a big swing at being a national product, but it's pretty clear that was always going to be a very, very difficult nut to crack. Like, it was just going to be so hard. Like, I know that you could argue, Jason, you're letting them off the hook. They made this mistake and that other mistake and then did this thing wrong. And look, just because I'm saying that it would have been impossible for MLS to break through into mainstream sports culture in America doesn't mean I'm letting them off the hook for some of the decisions they've made. I still think they've been too slow and too conservative with the spending on the product on the field. I think that's held them back. And we'll see if something is happening now, right? With the transfer market about to get flipped upside down because of the calendar change next year, with the way clubs are thinking of themselves as buyers and sellers in an international transfer market, as things line up with Mexico in a way that gives MLS no more excuses about competing on an international level with the clubs down south in Mexico. Like, there's some evidence coming of whether they've done any of these things right, or they've made fundamental changes that will actually put MLS in a place to be called the preeminent league of the Americas, right? Of the Americas. Now, we could talk about a couple of clubs in Brazil and that kind of thing, but there's a very good chance that if MLS doesn't screw this up, they could be the preeminent league in the Americas. But the problem with that is that you're still in the Americas. And the football world doesn't center on the Americas. It centers on Europe. And so as long as you're locked out of Europe, you're kind of locked out of being elite. You're locked out of being preeminent. You're locked out of being the league people think about first when they think about soccer. And in this country, the leagues that people think about first, if you speak English, more than likely it's the Premier League. If you speak Spanish, it might be La Liga, but it also very much might be Liga MX. And those things are baked into people's understanding of the game, sometimes culturally, sometimes just as a matter of what's the best league in the world? Oh, it's the Premier League. I don't know. I don't have any answers here, right? But I wanted to talk a little bit about MLS. Didn't necessarily intend to go in this direction. But it is a topic right now. Like, it is very much a moment where I don't think it's make or break. MLS is going to be here. But what kind of league MLS can be is probably going to be determined in the next 2 or 3 seasons. As for this season, here are a couple storylines that I have on my list, and I'm still catching up. So as I said to Matt Doyle this morning, as I wrote in my newsletter last week, Jason Davis, Soccer Eagle, sign up, my lane got shifted. I didn't change lanes. Somebody shifted my lane for me, and I'm fine with that because I get to talk about soccer for a living. But it means my focus on MLS has been lacking, and I really would like to dive back in. Like, I would really like to engage again in MLS. I don't know if that means I'm going to cover MLS a lot or write about MLS a lot, but certainly I want to be engaged with MLS. And here are my top 5 storylines. And if I'm missing any, go ahead and throw them in the chat. Probably am going to miss something. I'll count them down. Number 5, I've got the return of Tata to Atlanta. El regreso de Tata. Can he recapture the glory? Can he bring Atlanta United back to prominence in Major League Soccer? I see Atlanta United fans in my feeds being extremely down on their team. there is very little excitement, it seems, in Atlanta. I will throw in the fact that Doug Robertson lost his job means I'm not really high on Atlanta right now. But I guess the team, I would like to see them get better. Chris Henderson is the guy now with Garth. By the way, I don't know what the status is with Garth Lagerwey, but I'm certainly praying for the guy. Always enjoyed talking to him. It seemed like a wonderful guy, very smart. But Atlanta United's one of my stories. Can they bounce back? Because when Atlanta was good, when they were winning an MLS Cup title, when they were hosting big events, when people were engaged, when the train sounds were just blasting in that building, it was an incredible experience. I was on the field interviewing Don Garber at some event in Atlanta. It was either the MLS Cup final or the All-Star game. And it was one of those situations. I mean, some of you may have been in this environment before, but if you're in the stands, it's like, oh, this is so loud. It's incredible. When you're on the field, your body is vibrating. Like your heart is vibrating inside your chest because it's so loud. And obviously that's the case in that building when it's full. I'd like to see that again. Number 4 on my top 5. Los Angeles Galaxy. Can the LA Galaxy bounce back? They made some signings defensively. We all know Ricky Puig is going to be missing for another year. João Klaus has come in from St. Louis. I think I'm moderately optimistic that the Galaxy are going to be significantly better, but even that means probably not more than 6th or 7th in the West, and then it's what happens in the playoffs. And they are capable of doing something once they get anybody is. I mean, it can happen in MLS that you don't finish high up the table in the regular season and you make noise in the playoffs. But that is an interesting one for me. Remember that Greg Vanney signed a contract extension last year during that abysmal campaign that they had. Again, I think a lot of that was, well, you won us a cup and you didn't have Ricky Puig, and then they lost Mark Delgado, and like just those things obviously came back to be an issue for Greg. So is he a good coach, and can he turn this around, or are the Galaxy going to regret the contract extension? I think it's hard to suggest a guy who's won multiple MLS Cup titles is a bad coach, but I think he's got to prove something. Number 3 on my list, and I'm throwing this under one big blanket here, but it's sort of the baby manager, baby head coach trend that is happening or has happened in Major League Soccer over the last couple of years. Obviously, we've had some people leave the league and come through, leave the league. I'm not talking about Wilfred Nancy, who's not a baby, but obviously did leave and did not find success at Celtic. Eric Ramsey, formerly of Minnesota United, just 34 years old, went off to join West Brom. And now we've got this guy in Colorado, Matt Wells, who I believe is also in his 30s and doesn't have much of a resume, and now is taking over a team that has just they've been trying over and over and over again to find the right situation in Colorado. I don't think I'm looking at a list of MLS managers. I don't think this one is updated. So I'm going to have to check in on I can't remember. How old is Matt Wells at this point? I thought he was in his 37. Yeah. Okay. Not quite Eric Ramsey age, but 37 years old. And again, 0 managerial experience. And based on the recent history, I don't think that Rapids fans can be like, yep, we trust our team to sign the right guy. Could he be an Eric Ramsey type and find a way to make them relevant through some unique style of play? I don't know. Paxton Aronson is a talented young player who has decided to come to MLS after his European experience didn't go the way he wanted. Will he be unlocked by Matt Wells in Colorado? Probably says something, by the way, because I was looking for the ages of the MLS coaches. It probably says something, by the way, that if you go over to the Wikipedia page that lists MLS coaches, it's not updated. It still lists Eric Ramsey as the head coach of Minnesota United, and he is obviously not. Cameron Knowles, who is fairly young at 43, is the manager of Minnesota United. So, yeah, that's a sign of something that people don't. I mean, it still lists Atlanta United as vacant. Nobody cares enough to update the Wikipedia page for MLS managers. Anyway, Number 3. That was number 3. Number 2, Vancouver. Now, I wish I could say that this is about whether or not the Vancouver Whitecaps can be as good as they were last year. Right? I would love for this to be, I'm just watching to see if Sorensen and Vancouver can be what they were last year, because that was such a great story. And man, wasn't it fun to watch Thomas Mueller arrive and Brian White score a bunch of goals and Sebastian Berhalter emerge as a star and some of the other things that they did in Vancouver, obviously making an MLS Cup final, but falling short. I would love for that to be the only thing I'm talking about. I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that they very much look like a club on their last legs in Vancouver, unless something dramatic changes. And if you haven't been following, they didn't have a stadium deal until the very last minute. They finally got that over the line because the corporation that runs BC Place said, okay, basically we'll zero out the contract, meaning we'll take no money from this contract. But it still doesn't change the fact that Whitecaps don't make any money or make enough money off the stadium, off the concessions and everything else. And so economically, it's a bad spot. You've seen Don Garber talk about this a lot recently. And so is this going to be a season where we watch the Vancouver Whitecaps play as a very good team? Again, I think they're capable of doing something similar to what they did last year, only to have it be their last season in Vancouver. Like, I'm not wishing for that, right? I'm wondering if that's a story that's going to follow them throughout the year. By the way, they're just kicking off right now, Vancouver. They're playing in Costa Rica against CSS Cartagines. Cartagines. I'm going to try that one more time. Cartagines, because there's an accent on the E. Cartagines in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. It looks like they have a pretty solid squad on the field. I do not see Thomas Mueller in the starting lineup. Does anybody have an update on Mueller? Is he not ready yet? Are they working him in slowly? Is that what's going on there? All right, so that's number 2. And number 1, the best player in the world is still in MLS. I mean, the best player in history. Maybe not the best player in the world right now, but he's still there. They're opening up their brand new stadium, the pride and joy of Jorge Mas, Miami Freedom Park. They're doing that this year. Messi Messi delivered and won the title after all those things. Mueller's on the bench. Thank you, Jason. Mueller's on the bench. I didn't mention James Rodriguez. You're right, Robert. I should have mentioned James Rodriguez joining my Minnesota United. That will be an interesting one. But again, so when Antonio is saying Messi's not top 20 player. No, probably not, right? Totally agree with this. That Messi is not a top 20 player in the world. But he's still the most famous player in the world, not named Cristiano Ronaldo, and certainly the most famous player in the world not playing in Saudi Arabia. So does that matter for MLS? Now, Messi's a particular kind of guy, and he's not a salesman. And for all his fame and talent, he can't lift the league all by himself. And MLS, I don't know if they maybe thought it was just going to happen naturally, or if there was going to be some other way they can maximize Messi that it just didn't work. I don't know. Again, I talked about the Apple TV deal. This might be Messi's final year, right? Maybe he gets to the World Cup and finishes the MLS season and hangs him up after that. I think it's possible. I don't know if anybody really believes that that's going to happen yet, because he just loves playing the game. But let's see what happens here. I mean, Inter Miami keeps loading up. Everybody's accusing them of somehow breaking all of the budget rules, even though to me it seems like they've been fairly smart with the budget mechanisms, and people just want to go to Miami to play with Lionel Messi, because why wouldn't you do that if you could do that for at least something reasonable in terms of salary? And so that there's some storylines here. It did not seem as though Major League Soccer got the bump off of Messi over the last couple seasons that they really hoped for. And maybe because he's not new to MLS anymore, it will be hard for them to get those engines fired up. But there is a World Cup happening in the United States of America this summer. And Lionel Messi, based on everything I hear and everybody I talk to, is going to play, or at least be on that Argentina team. So maybe there's something there. Yeah. I'm also, fascinated again by some of the names that they've acquired. Herman Betarame, who could score buckets of goals. Messi might not score the goals this year. It might be Betarame who scores the goals. the Mexican International. They've they brought back some talented players. Allende, love to watch him play. They signed Dane St. Clair to be their number one goalkeeper, who is, he is his own show back there in net. We saw it in the playoffs last year with Minnesota. So I'm interested in Inter Miami. Maybe that new stadium will be the thing that really gets people excited, even though I think Miami's just such a weird sports place. So maybe that doesn't even make a difference. All right, man, I'm done. I think it's a good point from Antonio on Messi not really having a rival. That's a good point. But look, Suns on the other side of the country, and LAFC looked incredible in their CONCACAF Champions Cup match last night. So maybe we're going to see that. Miami might be the favorite, but LA will be there. I think Vancouver will probably be there in that mix. Who knows who else could step up? Didn't expect Philadelphia to win the Supporter Shield last year. So there's that. All right. Patreon.com/thebestsoccershow. Join the Besties community. Be over there. And when we do get the story from Jared Dubois, that's where it'll drop, right? If you are just joining us, and as I wrap up the show, the announcement was at the top of the program that Jared Dubois is stepping back from the Best Soccer Show, at least for the moment. So we are going in a new direction on the show. I'm going to still be here because I'm just obsessed with this, and I love you guys, and I like talking about American soccer, and this is fun. Well, we may be working in some new guest hosts. I'm going to be recruiting people and taking your suggestions. You can give me that stuff in the Patreon or on the Slack or anywhere for that matter. I think that's it. I mean, watch Morning Kick Around as well and subscribe to that channel and support us over there because that thing is growing by leaps and bounds, and I'm having fun with that. And I think it's a very special place for American soccer fans. But I think that's going to be it. I think I'm going to close it down and go get some sleep. So thank you very much for watching this episode or listening to this episode of the Best Soccer Show. And I will talk to you guys later. Bye.
Take us to DEFCON 3.
The Sausage King of Chicago.
WNBC. WNBC.
Who asked those questions?
It was there.
Oh, here we go. Saucing them up. Hit them. What?
Calm down, Greg. It's soccer. It's soccer.
Get to the chopper!
Damn, dog, that's inappropriate.
Danger zone!
Jay Rodius.